I'm gonna drink out of the bottle.
Okay, so our first follow-up lesson. So
Mm,
to explain, because there is, if you look back at scientific theory, we're slow to understand horse movement because there's just not a lot of money in it compared to human athletics. But a lot of the research is kind of the same. There was a big breakthrough around 1999 with a researcher named Jean-Marie Demois, and he
go
was
ahead.
the first one. So it's as recent as 1999 that even the spinal function of rotation came into our awareness, which in the horse industry is not a long time. Um, and so what some of the things he talked about was in more modern necropsies now, we know that the up-down movement of the spine, which is called extension and flexion, the full natural range of motion in the horse is 55 millimeters. That's not very big movement.
That's
If
a
you,
little bit over half a centimeter, which is less than, what is it, quarter of an inch?
yeah, I think it's about a
Something.
inch, yeah, inch and a quarter roughly translated, but
No,
it's not
less,
much.
but yeah.
Yeah. And so that up down movement, when we're trying to push the belly up and see this big movement, that isn't actually how the bones of the spine are working. And so in the study of the skeleton, the joints, the natural range of motion through all of the joints tell us what parts of the body are meant to be more stable and move less, and which parts of the body are meant to be more mobile and less of a stabilizing influence. So balance is always a blend of stability and mobility. And
Hmm.
so when, like the moving with the horse, right? If our spine and the horse's spine are highly mobile and they're meant to be the stable part of the body, then instantly we grip with our legs, we tighten our arms, and the horse begins to adjust the legs as well as the use of the neck, because now the limbs have to stabilize the motion because the central part of the skeleton is no longer stable.
Hmm.
And the articulation of the horse's vertebra, especially through the thorax and lumbar, the
Yeah.
thoracolumbar part, that range of motion in those vertebral joints is so small that at one time the scientists told us that they didn't move, and so saddle fit wasn't important because they moved so minimally that the movement was insignificant. And now we know, because the movement is small, every movement is significant.
Yeah.
So if we restrict the movement entirely, we do damage. But
Yeah.
if we exaggerate the movement, we make,
Something else. But yeah.
right. So every skeleton has two parts. One is called the appendicular skeleton, which mean, or
Hmm.
sorry, which is the appendages. That's the
Yes,
arms,
keep
the
moving all
legs,
that. Yeah.
appendages. The other part of the skeleton is known as the axial skeleton, which is the axis of the body. So what I focus on with balance is the axis of the horse and rider. And technically, the axial skeleton is comprised of the skull, the spine, the rib cage. And then I include the pelvis on a practical level, although technically that's part of the appendicular skeleton. So if we think of the body in broad terms, if the midline of the body, which all the design of the bones and the range of motion through the joints tells us the axis of the body is not meant for a lot of movement, it's meant primarily for stability,
Yeah.
right? So if the axis becomes too mobile, then the appendages have to take over the role of stability.
Yeah.
Does that make
We
sense?
just, yeah, we just had this discussion with Steph about the spine and the core stability, which people sometimes think it's the stomach,
Just the
but
belly. Yeah,
the core stability of the spine. If that doesn't function properly, the muscles take over.
right. So even another research paper Deb and I talked about way back when was looking even at muscle fiber types. And
Hmm.
so there are specific fiber types of muscle that also tell us where the body is meant to be stable and where the body is meant to transfer forces or mobility, right? And what's interesting is the muscle fiber types that are really primarily and only for stability. In the horse, the only two muscles that were constructed of that fiber type was, I forget the name of the muscle because it has like 4 Latin parts, but it's basically the tail head muscle and the diaphragm. And
Hmm.
so I found that fascinating. But all of the back muscles are the fiber type where you can balance stability, equal parts stability with mobility. And then every muscle in the body below the spine, which they call the hypaxial muscles, right?
Hmm.
All of those are more the fiber type for locomotion compared to stabilizing. So our primary stabilizing muscles are the muscles from the skull to the tail head and those that run deepest and closest to the spine itself. So
Okay.
not only do we know skeletally that's supposed to be the most stable part of the body,
Hmm.
that's reinforced with muscle fiber type. We know that's where the stability needs to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why it's not really an opinion. So then we go in training, how do we get there? How do we get there?
Right.
And
Well, this,
so what we talked about was as a rider, this is where it becomes critical. If we're moving with the horse in a way that makes because we have a little bit bigger natural range of motion through our spine compared to a horse's spine,
Mhm.
right? So if we sort of exaggerate our range of motion, and I didn't point that out in our last lesson, but I kept noticing how tight and strong your legs were. And your legs have to do all of the work to stay on your horse because if you're moving the spine and your midline with the movement of the horse, you're relaxed through your arms, so the legs were holding you on there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you might not even be conscious of it because it's an unconscious instinct of the body that if the midline is unstable, we have to grip with our arms or legs. Otherwise, we would
Usually,
fall over.
yeah, usually because Rainey has this really round belly, or that she's not because she's fat, or she's a little heavy, but she's just built round.
Hmm.
So with my legs and my narrow hips, I cannot even get my legs around her. So it gets to my knees, and then my legs, the bottom of my knee, from my knees down, just the angle. I can't get them.
Yeah. So let's
So
look at, because
yes.
I didn't point it out the last time we met, and I didn't talk about it in any of our emails, but I wanted to see, and I want to look at this most recent video first, because I want to see if that's already changed just by you focusing on stabilizing your midline and
Okay.
stabilizing your center, because you kind of also listened to the podcast on the point of balance, and that kind of made sense to you as well, correct?
Yeah.
So you thought about the center of rotation as well as the central midline.
Right.
And
And the very first time, this was the latest. That was yesterday. She was not very with it. She was very distracted, and she had anyway.
she had
Uh,
company.
I well, I had a neighbor came over, and they wanted to sit on Ranny, and I like to have people sit on her. But there was a very tall girl, and she was a large person, and she sat on Ranny, and I let Ranny, and she was great. But then I watched a video. The girl sat too far back.
Mm,
So, and that's after that I start riding Randy, and she was not too much. She didn't want me to mount actually.
okay.
So, well, let's see.
Yeah, she starts off a little bit wanting to drop her back and a little hesitant.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
she's not. Yeah.
But definitely, and you can go back and look at our initial last time when we did a lesson, and you'll
Yeah.
see instantly the difference in how you're using your legs. So this is just beautiful, Tina. Like you've already quieted, and internally, you're having to adjust a lot. Like the feeling on the inside is that we're constantly moving and adjusting. But what it looks like, the way I know the rider is organizing correctly, is because I don't see the midline move.
Yeah. This was I. I had to start actually. I couldn't go right from the inside to feel it. I started the first time. I did my regular ride with the swinging legs and
Mm-hmm.
everything, and then I started to center from the outside, a little bit more in, a little bit more in, a little bit more out, a little bit more in, a little bit more out, and yesterday it was more of a like a pole inside,
Yes.
like a hollow pole,
Yes.
but not.
It's not
It's not a
stiff, but it is
firm.
straight.
Yes, like they have those pool noodles. They may
Yes.
be too flexible, but it was just like a, what is it? A cylinder from the top to my sternum, from the
Yes.
sternum to my bum. I can't even think of the right words, and it felt more stable.
Yes.
Even when she was, give me 1 second. Hey,
Mm-hmm. Very good.
sorry,
That's
I
okay.
can't see it really well because it's a little choppy. But does it
Ye-
appear choppy to you too? The video?
you know what? Hang on. Let me pause this and stop the share a second. There's a little thing I have to click to optimize the video. I might have forgotten to click that. Yeah, I did. This should smooth it out a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to pick up. So what I'm seeing, and we'll talk about Rainey's response to what you're doing, because that will be kind of the next layer of the work. But what I'm looking at first is how much you have already changed as a rider. So you're kind of still finding where to put that pool noodle. I love that description because I think of it too, like if you imagine a centaur that's half person, half horse. It's sort of we are this stable upper body part of the horse, or I've described it as the feeling of maybe being a carousel pole in the middle of the movement. But there's nothing stiff or tight about it, even though we have that sense of a
Yeah.
very straight line of force. And so what I see is here from your head through your neck, through your center to your seat bones, that is moving so much less. Your rib cage is moving less. And your arms, which you didn't have a problem with your arms before, you managed to keep them soft, even when your midline was not very stable. The biggest difference I see is your legs are now draping and hanging rather than sort of kind of pulling inward. There's a softness to the muscles around your thigh that was different in the last video.
Okay. My legs seem longer in this video.
Yeah, and they physically do get longer because we quit contracting the muscles.
Yeah.
So when we grip and we need our body for stability, if we need the legs for stability, the muscles shorten in order to grip. When we're actually balancing the skeleton, and this is what happens in the horse too, the muscles go from a shortening type of contraction called concentric contraction, and they instantly go into length. And then if we need them, we can still contract the muscle and keep the length. That's called eccentric contraction. It's just a
Okay.
different type of contraction. And that's what you're starting to do with your deeper adductor muscles on the inner thigh. So there's a little bit of falling back into the glutes where you get just a tiny bit behind the vertical. If you think of the pool noodle that you were feeling, her movement basically tries to shift that pool noodle left, right, forward, and back. And our job as riders is to keep placing that pool noodle vertical over the ground, over gravity. So instead
Yeah.
of looking for the middle of the horse, we adjust ourselves to keep finding our vertical stability in the middle of all that movement. And when we do that, every time we fix our own balance, those weight adjustments and muscle use changes are the very aids that guide our horse into balance. More important than the leg aid and the rein aid or anything else we do. So just by you balancing yourself, you see she's already exploring and changing her movement.
Yes.
And
What I think I noticed, her barrel is not moving as far left and right, but her butt cheeks are more left and right.
yes, yes.
Is that
So
okay?
yes. So what you've done is started to stabilize the barrel. She's still a little bit crooked through the pelvis. And so you can see a little more movement in the pelvis that hasn't quite settled down yet. But what you'll notice is as that gets more stable behind, those will be the strides where she also lengthens the neck. Those two things go together.
Okay.
Okay. So when she's shortening the neck, like when she's sort of bringing the head up and shortening the neck muscles a bit, she's more stable through the barrel, but she hasn't yet sort of figured that out back to the hindquarters.
Yeah.
Right. So there
I
where she does get level and stable, even for just a moment, she spontaneously chooses to lengthen the neck. That's the
I
visual thing we see in front of us as we feel the stability more behind us and underneath us.
I
Those
actually could go
those go
ahead.
together. I was just going to
Yeah.
say those go together.
Together.
Hmm.
I could feel the first time. Well, I could feel when I started getting a little bit more wobbly again,
Hmm.
and her different reaction. And when like my pool noodle, it goes through my body, through hers, and kind of is on the ground.
Hmm.
And there's a base on the ground, and it just keeps sliding on the ground. I don't know how to explain it.
Yes.
Like an umbrella with a base, but it's very
Yes.
light and it goes forward basically with me.
It's
I can feel.
exactly it. I love that description. I love it when people come up with these great descriptions. That is exactly it because if you think of like an umbrella, the stand it has just a tiny bit of wiggle room because the force of the wind is going to affect it.
Yeah,
And if we make it too tight, too staunch,
it
the wind
breaks.
blows it over or breaks it. But if we make it too loose, then every little breeze makes it almost fall over. So it's kind of fighting that right amount of tone or
Yeah.
tension that allows it to adjust to the changing force without falling over and without becoming constantly wobbly. That's exactly
Yeah.
it. That you just nailed it absolutely. So you are 100% on the right track with thinking about how you're riding.
Well, good.
So I want to play this again if that's okay before
Yeah,
we
yeah,
move on to another video because with the other videos you sent earlier, this sort of shows me the accumulation of everything you figured out along the way. And I just love
yeah.
it. So
Oh, thank you.
So she does start off with her neck short, her back dropped. She's not too sure she wants you on. She takes a few stiff steps off the mounting block. And that is from a rider may be sitting too heavy in the seat and concentrating the body weight into her spine where she can't get organized against that force. And then
Yeah.
the way you ride her, it starts to change very quickly. So even though she starts off a little bit upside down and a little stiff in the legs, by the time you even make the first lap, she's getting more fluid through the legs, more relaxed through the back, which is going to also mean more stable. And she already goes to lengthen her neck. That
Yes.
is, I'm pointing it out because that is the power of how dynamic this is, how instant this is. It doesn't mean our horse is perfect instantly. It means that we affect how our horse can balance instantly. Does that
When I
make sense?
noticed that when I rode her and I noticed she was actually putting her head forward, I wanted to throw the reins up, out and go.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Yes, exactly. And then what I also love, because you have such good communication with this horse, here where she gets stuck, you keep your stability beautifully, and then you repeat the leg aid, but you give her time to think through, how do I organize myself in order to move? That is where a lot of people blow it because they think the halting is a mistake or it's bad. And so they either use such a strong leg aid that their body gets unstable, or they sort of shock the horse into forward and lose the balance in the process. And how you did that and waited for her was beautifully done. Perfect. Keep
Oh,
repeating that.
wow.
That's the
See,
way you
I,
do it.
I wanted to ask you about that one when we started, because I feel that I don't give her enough rest when she's unstable. I feel like I'm pushing her too much. After I'm done writing, I'm like, I think I pushed her too much again.
Mm-mm.
And
No,
when we
because
started in the,
let me just go
go ahead.
back to that again. Let me go back to where she had halted. Yeah. So here's where you give her the time to halt and think about it. So she starts off a little bit wobbly, right? I think this is it. She starts off a little wobbly and you
See,
just stay stable. And as she comes around this corner, everything you did back over on the other side, she comes around the corner with her pelvis level, starting to use the right hind leg. She's level up until about this point. Then she goes a little high on the right hip again. But it was that what she had stopped to think about was your body weight was making her habitual pattern harder for her, uncomfortable. So in that moment that they halt, and they do this frequently when you start, because I call it a thinking break. The ears show you
yeah.
that they're concentrating, they're not off with the butterflies, but they kind of slam on the brakes and they don't go forward off the leg easily. And when they do that, I give them a minute because as you get more and more sensitive to the changes in her body, you realize, oh, she's trying to reorganize how she goes forward. And then
Yeah.
they explore something and they fix themselves. And that's really the process of balancing a horse is we can't make them balance, but we can discourage the imbalance and give them the space to make new discoveries.
Okay.
Okay.
So she started, this is kind of a little bit new, uh, like in the far left corner when we go to the left,
Mm-hmm.
basically. She puts her shoulder out to the left, her head to the right, and goes kind of sideways,
Yes.
like she did when we started. And I'm like, all right, what's going on now? And I
So
was kind of,
what that is she lost either comfort or she lost the stability of the improvement you got from the hind leg. So
okay.
when they escape like that a little bit sideways, it's because they lost you can either say the levelness of the pelvis, the function of one hind leg or the other, or the stability of the whole hind quarter in general. And they
Oh, I
kind of,
like.
go a bit sideways. It could be any one of those reasons.
I like the escape thought. Like when she escapes to the left for no reason, I can now when she escapes to my aids, whatever,
Hmm.
doesn't go straight, then I can now understand that this is part of the process of her just finding her core stability or
Yes.
exploring it. Okay.
Yes. And so when I get horses that are really defensive or trying to escape everything, what that tells me in my mind is I'm asking the horse to do something that is uncomfortable. I need to back it down. I need to make it easier, right? Because they'll escape once in a while, like she did. It's sort of telling you, I either lost it or it's getting a little uncomfortable. And the way
Okay.
you're managing it is perfect. You don't make a
Oh,
big deal out of it. You just kind of get her back on track and you start over. And because you don't make a big deal out of it, she gets better every lap that is on this video. Like just there in that far corner where she's very slow, but you could see the footfalls. Now she's kind of lost it, but coming around by this big tree into that corner, her leg movement was very even and methodical and rhythmic. Her neck was long, and you looked quietly stable. And so those were sort of the moments of her best balance. And then she stepped kind of over the logs and lost it a little bit. And it's taken you now from there to about here to start to regain the balance. And that's again how it goes. So as she comes now towards this corner there, she starts to get the back and hindquarters stable, lengthen the neck. And if we watch the pelvis, it's still a little high on the right. So it's still a work in progress, but better. So you might feel
oh, I
like
see that now.
you still need weight to your right side, but maybe a few pounds less, right?
Okay. I just saw that her right is still higher from the
Yes.
back. I didn't
And
notice that
then
before.
as you come through this corner again, right, on the turns is where the horses are really supposed to support the stability through the hind legs. The straight lines, they don't have to be as engaged. The turns, they have to be more engaged to have the same balance. So if she hesitates on the turns a little bit, it's because it's challenging the engagement of the hindquarter, right? And then if you just patiently keep the stability, keep the levelness, keep the straight neck through the turn, she'll then go into the straight line with more equal use of the hind legs.
Okay.
And
She
it
definitely,
changes little by little. So you can see this time around the right hip still higher, but not as high. And that is how we gently restore the function of all four legs, neck, head, spine, without putting them into such a state of change that we create discomfort, pain, or resistance.
okay. Did you notice that my reins were a little shorter than usual? I
Mm,
felt like I hold them a little shorter. I don't know.
yes, but you're so soft through your arms and you're so
Okay.
gentle with the reins. You're somebody who could shorten your reins and never worry about restricting the horse. And what I find, I just did a video on this the other day for YouTube, riding my horse Rafalco. He was trained in traditional dressage, and the biggest problem I had with him was if I touched the reins at all, he overcurled his neck and put his head in roll cur position
Yeah.
and just became so chompy and neurotic. It was a big stress response. And as his balance has improved through his back and hindquarter, he now is the one that takes the contact. So I always have a loose rein, but I can feel when he balances, he very lightly puts some pressure on the bit. And that's how the horses should do it, right? And
Yes.
because you're very light with the reins, and I would never change that. And some
Okay.
horses I've had to rehab, you can't even use the reins. So I learned how to get the balance without the reins. I don't need to create restriction to lift the back. That's
Yeah.
not necessary. So again, I love that when she's pausing here, how patient you are, and you're kind of letting her, and this is a good way to start because you're learning to feel details that you never paid attention before. So the break is just as good for you as her.
Yeah.
And this is what all horses do in order to kind of explore, when you stay level and you stay vertical, she runs into your body. It becomes like a passive constant aid that guides her balance. So if she's out of balance, you feel those forces pushing and pulling on you. And when you resist them, you begin to correct, you begin to influence, I should say,
Yeah.
her coordination. And
But not by,
you don't
go ahead,
make her
sorry.
do it. You
Right.
make the imbalance uncomfortable enough that she looks for comfort.
Yeah. And
And
she
by
finds the right way.
yes, she finds
Yes.
the
And
right
that's
way.
what I want for my horse, to find things by me being a guardian, being the guide, not making her do things. Okay, sometimes I
Absolutely.
make her do things, but
Well, and the truth is, it's like when we think of balance or optimal coordination of the body, I could not make you learn how to ride a bike or swim or drive a car. There's no way I could make you do that. I can guide you, but ultimately you have to discover that
right.
coordination, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I look at horse balance. I can guide the coordination, but ultimately that little aha moment where they go, oh, that's how you do it. That has to come from the inside of the horse. There's no way
Yeah.
we can make that happen.
And this is what, when I got her, that's what I was trying to do. My intent was so she's not going to be on any restrictions. She can find her own balance, which was great, but obviously it wasn't. Uh, she still needs now. I think now she needs more refinement to find
Yeah.
her movement.
And that's what sort of ended up frustrating me when I went through natural horsemanship is I go, it would be like giving a kid a bicycle with zero instruction. And some kids would figure out how to ride, some would never figure out how to ride, some might get hurt in the process, where giving a little bit of guidance wouldn't hurt anything,
Yeah,
right? So this is a very short video. Let me play it
yeah. This
again.
is the
So this was where you
sorry,
wanted to
my neighbor
show.
Ben. I cut this from the other one because it
Hmm.
was so far away. I zoomed in, but
Hmm.
this is where I noticed that she actually puts her head down from the right side of the frame to the left side of the frame twice,
Yes.
and I could actually feel some change in her back. I couldn't remember. I can't remember what it was, but there was some. I could feel a muscle or something pushing up a little bit.
Hmm.
I'm not sure. I just could feel something.
So when a horse begins to come, like when they push the back down, the side effect of the spine pushing down in what we call longitudinal extension, the whole spine is pushing down. Every single time the horse's spine does that, the side effect of that is always what's called hyperrotation. So we get a
Hmm.
back and forth rolling when the back pushes down. And what
Yeah.
I find so interesting about that is we as humans, it's very hard for us, again, because we're talking a 55 millimeter range of motion. It's not very obvious to us when the back is pushing down. People
Hmm.
think they feel it, but I find most people don't, including myself. But what we do feel very clearly is the side effect of the spine pushing down creates a side to side rocking effect. And so whenever I feel either rocking quickly, slowly, asymmetrically, symmetrically, it doesn't matter. The more I feel that side to side rolling, the more I know the spine is pushing down.
Okay.
Even if I can't sense the downward part, I
Yeah.
feel the side to side. So the opposite is true. When they start to lift the back, long before we actually feel a vertical lift, which is the end degrees of fully flexing the spine. The early beginning degrees of pushing the spine upward reduces all excess movement. It increases the feeling of stability. So, what we feel when they lift the back, and this is the whole reason, it's not really for performance. I go, when they lift the back, it stabilizes the middle of the horse. So, right where we sit becomes easier to ride. There's just less force pushing us left, right, forward, or back. And we feel the horse gets softer, but also moves us less. We feel maybe the horse gets wider.
Yes,
But
there was a thickness, like a thickness to it.
So we
Now
don't
that I'm,
always feel, I think we're sort of told we're supposed to feel lift, like it's upward. And I go, that's kind of the last part that we feel. What we feel before we feel that is we feel less movement across the board. It's just more stillness, less movement. And then we feel kind of a softening, widening effect of the back. And that tells you she's beginning to lift the back, which means the hindquarters are doing at least the minimal part of their job, which also means she can now lengthen all of these stabilizing muscles across from the tail head all the way to the pole. And so
yeah,
you see her spontaneously choosing to
yep.
lengthen the neck, right? That lengthening of the neck is actually the final part of that series.
Yeah, I was pretty
Yeah.
psyched when I saw that on the video.
Yeah.
And when I was riding her, I could feel it, I could see it. But when I saw it in the video, it's like, oh my gosh, she did it.
Yeah. And so you see in this moment where I froze it, if I draw a vertical line from the sky to the ground, you're pretty much got your head, spine, and pelvis pretty well aligned to that vertical force of gravity. Then if I look at her skull, spine, and pelvis, it's getting more horizontal to gravity, which is where it should be. You see that?
Yeah,
So this posture that I call it, we could call it long and level, or we could call it, I call it basic balance. It's a long frame, but it's a balanced frame. You're getting strides of that already. They don't last long, and she's kind of
hmm.
slow and thoughtful to get there. But the fact that she's getting them is huge,
Oh, good.
huge. Yeah, because what that means is you don't have any super strong habits, which is how you got her. All the
Yeah,
work you did restored her back to sort of a blank slate. She might not have great balance, but she also has no hindrance to learning really good balance.
okay. Oh,
Yeah.
good.
And that
I,
shows up because you got these great steps in what, 2 weeks at the most? I think maybe
yeah,
a
I rode her.
week.
This
Yeah.
is the third time I rode her. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. So what we're looking for is however we get there, the more of these strides we get. We recognize them because they're smoother, it's more stable, the neck lengthens, we feel everything get a little easier. It comes and goes, one stride here, gone, two strides here and there, gone,
Yeah.
right? As soon as it's gone, you adjust your balance. You know somewhere she maybe moved you out of the way, right? So you go, okay, let me adjust my balance. Let me maybe help the neck stay straight. Let me give a leg aid if she stopped. And then she'll walk back into that more ideal coordination. So she'll go in and out of it because
Yeah.
we have to change muscle use. We have to change joint function. So it's not an immediate thing. It kind of comes and goes.
Yeah. I'm still going in and out because sometimes I lose it.
Yeah.
And then we both go a little wibbly wobbly, and that's okay. And then I have to center and feel my pool noodle with the plateau or whatever it's called in the bottom. And then, yeah. I
Yes.
just want to make sure that I'm doing her justice, that I'm not doing something to hinder her to be better.
I can already see in this video all of the issues that we met about that under the swinging leg lameness, the right hind being worse, both hind legs being a little disengaged. And even though she was relaxed and she trusts you and you have this great bond, she still had a little bit the physical habit of that posture that she used for tolting before you
Yeah.
got her. That posture is still her strongest coordination, her strongest habit of movement, right? And
Because that's how she has, that's how her body thinks that's how she balanced.
that was normal. Yeah,
Yes.
that was what she knew.
Yeah.
So to learn something different takes a little bit of guidance. And just in the very short time, if this is your third ride, because you're using yourself dynamically, and so is she, you're already getting steps of what we're looking for.
Yes.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yee.
Yeah.
Have a good teacher too. I have two good teachers.
So I pulled out a little tool. There's only one thing I would change about your balance to refine it a tiny bit is
My neck. Go
it's
ahead.
really your center. So if I look at your body and I guessed where your body weight was, do you see visually? I can tell you have most of your body weight in your seat, more than your arms or your legs. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, go ahead.
So if I draw a straight line down, and I'm not always good with my annotation tools, you can sort of see that the weight, the body is a little bit behind the vertical. So the head is in front because the butt is behind, and the legs are
Okay.
in front because there's too
They,
much weight in your seat.
yeah, they
Just a,
can't go anywhere else. I tried hard to have like from the centered writing and idea of balance from the side.
mhm,
There is no way. I tried everything. My legs do not go back further.
that's fine. I'm not going to ask you to do that.
It's
What I'm going to
but
ask
the
you to,
upper body is. I'm so, go ahead. Sorry.
so if you only straighten the upper body,
Yeah.
but you don't adjust the pelvis. The pelvis is where I focus. So
Okay.
underneath our pelvis, our seat bones are like little, they're shaped like little
Right.
rockers,
Yeah.
right?
Two of them.
And
Yeah.
where you are is you're a little bit on the back side of the rocker. And so if you have sitting on the couch, imagine you're riding and just go to your normal riding position. And what you'll find is that compared to your thigh bones, your pelvis has a little bit more weight compared to your thigh. And that also means you're a tiny bit past the point of the rocker. So
Okay.
just sitting there, you can try this. You have your feet on the floor.
Yeah. I play with my seat bones all the time, and I thought I usually have like if I'm totally on my seat bones, if they point down, I'm off my butt. But
It,
my
it's
seat bones.
it's a little bit the opposite. So so if you just what you're doing now as you're thinking about it, you've been rocking backwards and forwards on the sofa. So notice when you sit back, your weight comes out of your legs and goes into your seat. And then if you take your shoulders forward, if you just rock forward, right? Not bending the spine, just rocking the whole spine a little bit more forward. Do it slowly and start to notice where the weight just automatically comes a little bit out of your seat and it goes into your legs. And see if you can feel that place where the weight is more equal between your seat and your legs. Even sitting there on the couch, it's the same thing.
Okay.
You feel that?
Yeah, and the seat and the leg weight, the weight in the legs and in the seat now
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when I ride bareback, I like to keep because what a good saddle, not every saddle, the only benefit of a saddle is that the tree of the saddle distributes our body weight over a greater surface area. So when I ride bareback, and I don't, and I do it all the time. I love bareback, but I'm a little bit careful not to let the weight become too much in my seat. I keep it slightly more in my thighs. And
Okay.
the reason I do that is because then I'm distributing the weight this way between my pelvis and my thighs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Otherwise, I have a concentration of body weight per square inch that is more
Yeah.
intense. Does that
And
make
that's why
sense?
yeah, because I usually that's why I can't sit like straight on
Yeah.
my seat bones pointing down. That actually hurts my seat bones.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm leaning just a little bit back. But now when I'm thinking about putting weight in my legs or into my knees downward, it does actually lift my bum up.
Yeah.
And
And
it
so
puts me
that paying attention to our internal body weight distribution, the first layer, what you already worked on, is how to shift your weight unequally left to right based on how she's moving or the movement of the rotation. Now I'm saying front to back, a different direction,
hmm
right? The way we know we're vertical and the way we can allow our body to do it gently and individually is just pay attention to where our body weight is between our head and our feet. So
Okay.
people who do a lot of shoulders back, they bring their weight too high,
hmm
right? You don't do that. That's not your issue, right? You have the weight shifted down, which is where it should be, but then you have it between the seat and legs, more in the seat compared to the legs. So all you
Okay.
have to do is if you just put your head over your spine and tilt that whole unit forward and back, forward and back. You'll feel where the weight goes more into the thighs and is more equal or slightly heavier than the seat. A that would be your true vertical position.
Okay. I did this with my head, letting it fall back and forward to find the perfect point. And
Hmm.
I can do this with my seat bones. But if I only do the seat bones, I have the center, but it doesn't affect my legs.
Oh, yeah. See,
So,
and this is the problem. People who say they specialize in body mechanics, they're still talking about where your bones are supposed to be, and people are still contorting themselves into uncomfortable use and missing the point. I go, it's all physics. It's where your body weight needs to be that will help you be more stable and influence Rainey's balance more
yeah.
accurately, right? And I find when I just help people sense body weight, not only left to right, but front to back and up to down, what that does is we find our own way there. So even if we have arthritis, which all of us have, or old injuries, which all of us have, we can still find very accurate balance in a comfortable way. But that is unique to your body. You have to
Yeah.
feel it. You have to feel your way into it. So that would be the only thing I would add for you to this lesson. I think everything you're doing, how you're using your aids, how you're using your body, how you're allowing Rainey to discover and think, all of that, mwah, perfect.
Ah, good, Manny. Good job,
Perfect.
girl.
Yes.
She's good.
Yes.
I couldn't ask for a better horse. So,
No, the two of you are just awesome. And so it doesn't surprise me entirely how much progress you've made in such a quick time. That it's just awesome. So
ah,
then if
yes.
we maybe let me switch videos. Well, no, let's look at this one more time. Um, for her, the way you can influence her discovery process with what you ask her to do is, first of all, you're doing a great job allowing whatever speed she chooses and only giving a leg aid after she halts. That's very important because as she changes the use of the spine and the placement of the hind legs, all horses will explore shorter strides, longer strides, slower speeds, faster speeds, and we have to allow that exploration as part of the process. So if they go really, really slow, I wait until they halt before I give the leg aid. If they go really, really fast, I don't try to hold them back with the reins. Sometimes I'll put them on a circle or a tighter turn to help them slow down, but I never have to pull against a fast speed. So whether they're a little bit fast or a little bit slow, that's part of the process of them changing their coordination. And then on your path of travel, which is the steering, just have in mind that on a straight path of travel, a straight line, it's a little easier to get the alignment of the spine and for her to become level left to right, to make the barrel and the pelvis more level, as well as the midline a little straighter. That's a little easier for horses when they're tracking a straight line.
Mhm.
But it's also easier on a straight line for them to just kind of not use the hindquarters or disengage and fall forward, right? When you make a turn, even these corners, as you come through the corners, I consider those, think of them as 1/4 of a circle,
Yeah.
right? So when you go on turns or circles, what happens is that rotation and alignment of the spine are very challenged, but it helps the horse place the hind legs a little bit deeper towards the center of the body. So it makes the engagement easier, but it makes the straightness harder.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So depending on where you feel she's struggling, you can do more turns or you can make longer straight lines.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And so to help
She,
her, the most important thing that helps her is how you balance and how you talk to her through the aids. That to me is the primary, most important thing. The
okay.
second most important thing is playing with the path of travel or transitions, speed adjustments, even between walk and halt, to help her explore a little bit more wherever she needs help.
Okay. I
Does that?
think her biggest challenge are the corners.
Mhm.
The tighter corners, like this, where she's going right now, it's like a long stretched corner. It's not like really a turn.
Yes.
And she actually goes more freely. I noticed that. It's when she comes around to the left, where the left screen is, on that corner or the corner closest to the camera. That's where she has the hardest time.
Yes.
That's where she seems to fall in and starts before we get to those corners or turns. She slows down, and I sometimes I ask her to keep going, and sometimes I just let her wait and whatever she needs to do.
Yeah. And that's why I'm just explaining how straight lines versus turns and circles influence her body, influence the use of her body
Yeah.
dynamically. And also how upward and like the two elements I use the most when I'm trying to restore healthy engagement of the hindquarters or the hind legs is I use turns, circles, and transitions. Up and down have equal value. So transitions, turns, and circles that can kind of concentrate efforts if a horse needs a lot of help building up the hindquarter use. If the bigger issue is more crookedness and twisting, then I might do more straight lines and just let them choose their speed. Or I can do any combination of both. So right now, I would not change exactly what you're asking her to do. You're letting her choose the speed of the walk. You're not asking for anything faster than the walk, and you're allowing the halt when she chooses it. Perfect. Keep doing that. On the straight lines, focus on um, Focus on your balance, especially if she's lengthening her neck. Those might be where you find the best steps. As you come into the corners or the turns, that's where she's going to roll the barrel more. She's going to
Hmm.
try to bend her neck more. She might try to halt, right? Or she might slow way down, like one step at a time. All of those things are her figuring out the engagement, right? So be patient with her, but keep encouraging her after the halt to
Okay.
try again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not planning to do anything different. I just
Mm-mm.
continue. If it takes another month, it takes another month or 2 months, but try to get her
So
straight through. Go ahead.
yeah, so before we would focus any effort. So Rainey has two important habits related to her coordination. One is the little bit of that residual dropping the back, tolting posture,
Hmm.
right? And the other one is the crookedness we talked about, the asymmetrical use left to right,
Kind.
that we talked about before. So the right hind being
Yeah.
underused and having a swinging leg lameness, which means also she's going to overload the left front leg
Fine.
typically,
Yeah.
right? So before we address either that habitual twist and bend through the spine, or we start to strengthen both hind legs with more engagement, before we would target the efforts that way, I would make sure in what you're already doing that this posture that we're looking at right now becomes the most prevalent posture of the ride.
Hmm. Okay.
Right
Good.
right now you get it 10% of the time,
Yep.
but the more you practice, every time you practice, you're going to see that percentage moves a little bit from 10% to 12%, 12% to
Okay.
15%. And so I wouldn't change exactly what you're doing other than play with your body weight a little bit between your
Okay.
seat and legs, and then just give her some time and see what she does with it. Because
Good.
right now, if we like to really restore the function of her right hind leg, we would do right circles, but that's too much for her right now. You wouldn't have enough forward, and it might even be painful. So I wouldn't go there yet. The same
Okay.
thing with working with the left front. We might need to play a little bit with a slight counter bend. And so that's something that she's not ready for yet. But
Okay.
that's how you would target specific problems once her balance is getting better overall.
Okay. Good. Yeah,
Does
I'm
that
in
make
no rush.
sense?
Yes.
Excellent.
I feel like her right hind, when I look from her from the back, the right hind doesn't seem to swing out so much.
Yeah, it's already better. Yeah,
It's maybe not much, but I feel like there's a little bit of a change.
absolutely. Absolutely, there's a change. And I can see it. Like I said, instead of seeing this very steep asymmetrical pelvis coming around like we looked at in the first lesson, it's gone, we could say it's gone from this angle to this angle.
Yeah.
And right. And so we're gradually, because every time we're changing things like that, every muscle, all the soft tissue, everything has to readjust. So that's why it has to be a delicate, slow process, because if we force it, we can do damage to joints or muscles. We don't want to
Yeah.
force it. We want to just keep going. Are we going the right direction? Are we
And
getting closer?
my body has to adjust now too. So it's going to take my body a little bit to do more gymnastic things or more playful stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, and
riding her this way.
you will find muscles that maybe haven't been used in a while.
Yeah.
You're going to feel like it sounds so funny because my neighbors watch me ride and they think I'm never doing anything. And some horses, in order to look quietly still, I'm working as hard as I can. I'm using core muscles. I'm dripping in sweat, and nobody can see what I'm doing. It's just between me and the horse.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
a little bit exhausted
Yes.
yesterday.
I
Not
know.
so much the body, but I was like, whew, that's hard work to
Yeah.
stay stable without tensing up. I think that is a big challenge for people, for
Oh,
humans.
yes.
Because if
This
we're
is,
loose and then we're going to be stiff. And so I had to really focus on arms, leg. Yeah, good, good. Yeah, you relax. Oh, yeah, you're stiff. No, go back. Relax. So I had to constantly check on myself and then try to check on Ranny to see what's going on with between my body and hers. So it's
yes.
quite a lot to take in.
Yes.
It's fun.
No, and people
I
think
wouldn't
the
want any
work,
different.
people think the walk is so boring. And I go, you're just not tuning in to all the information that's available there. Because in order to adjust our balance in real time with the movement of a horse, it's mentally exhausting. And then physically, we
Yeah,
find different muscles that we have to strengthen up. So this is very interesting to me. The first two videos we looked at were the most recent ones from yesterday.
yeah,
These first videos were kind of, now I'm into the first four videos, three or four that you sent
yeah.
that
That was
were,
from the first of that was on Monday. So the last one was yesterday, and the first one was Monday. This one is Monday.
mhm. And this is so interesting to me. I'm going to play it a couple of times to point things out. So as you're exploring, and that's why I wanted to look at the most recent videos first, because I know how intensely you've been thinking about this. And I wanted to see the latest of what you had gotten to for this
Yeah,
lesson. But just looking back to the video before, first of all, we can see Rainey is more often in that dropped back posture,
yeah.
right? She's more often escaping you. She's telling you, what are you doing up there? This is hard and it's different, right? And you're hanging in there with her beautifully and she's giving it a go. But you can kind of see there's a whole lot more exploring, escaping, adjusting going
Yeah.
on. And then I think as you come towards the camera here, do you see your legs are much tighter even in this video compared to the one we just looked at? Your legs are
Yeah.
draping in the last video, and here they're still holding a little bit.
And my shoulder goes to the left.
Yes, because when you grip with your arms and legs, you can't really feel your seat. And so she puts you off to the left more than you're aware of in this
Yeah.
video. But as you kept playing with your midline and your balance, and I love the pool noodle, you're right on track with all of your discoveries. That alone changed the use of your legs and your ability to not get pushed over to the left. You felt where you needed to be more accurately. And once you were there, she goes, okay, now I can rebalance. So this is just a fantastic. How many days apart were these two videos?
One day.
That's amazing. So what the two of you figured out in one ride is it warms my heart because when we can work that dynamically, and that's why I complimented you so much on the relationship with your horse, because without that trust and without that receptiveness to each other, there's no way you could have felt and changed as fast as you did in three rides. So everything you did before we met set up for this part to go quickly and easily for the two of you because there's no resistance.
Yeah.
There's no resistance.
There's no resistance from her. She is, yeah. I think
Yeah,
the relationship does make a big difference. She might not want to do something, but she knows sometimes I push her, I can push her a little bit. And I have done my you run right now, you canter, and I don't care if you like it or not. If you lose your mind, I don't care. She
yeah,
knows that too. But
yeah,
I think she knows that I'm not going to kill her or
exactly. And so
nothing.
she feels
Good.
safe. Like you kind of allow this wiggle room with her that I love when she's sort of exploring her balance and you are. and she goes through your aids and pushes sideways, your energy is like, whatever, no big deal. Let's just kind of get back on track. That's exactly the timing and feel that you need to refine balance. It's a big deal. And so when she gets it, then when she loses it, you're sort of staying the same. And you're just going, we can figure this out. And so she doesn't panic, but she feels free to let you know, I'm not sure I like this. This is kind of hard. I don't understand what you're doing. And you let her do that. And so that's just perfect because that's the key to changing the balance. If when we think we're going to put the horse between our aids, we get it wrong. We just don't do a very good job. The horse is always going to do a better job than any person on the planet because
Yeah.
they feel it.
And I
So,
tried to read on her. Don't get me wrong. I have lost my patience with her too.
oh yeah, we all
Um,
have. But you've been mostly fair. I
yes, I
go,
lose my patience and then like, okay, I told you not to do this. And then she's like, "Pfft," and she comes right back. So it's not, we don't have a big argument for a long time. It's just me, you know, smacking her a little on the bum because I asked her to move just a little faster, not the last couple of days with this one, but before. And then she's like, kicks maybe to the side and bucks a little
it's
bit
like
and
it's like
runs. And
family.
then she's like, fine, yes,
It's like family. I
yeah,
I go, it's like, your parents, your kids, your spouse, whatever. Yeah, to me, it's the same thing. So I go, I don't have any illusion of horses being perfect. I go, but they're my
yeah,
family. So we're
yes.
we're going to figure it out.
And I don't abuse my horses, but I'll stand my ground. So,
Yeah. No, same
and she
thing.
knows that too. Yeah.
hmm So here, I just want to point out the difference of what you achieved on your own with your own balance in a couple of rides. So this is what
That,
I saw the first video, right?
yeah,
This leaning. And what that is as her leg pushes and comes underneath as best it can, the barrel is rolling, and that's creating a lot of muscle tightness on her right side. It's the muscle tightness that pushes the rider to the left. And so here, your unconscious response, or maybe the way you were trained, doesn't matter, is to tighten the leg instead of adjusting the torso.
yeah,
And as soon as you changed that around and you adjusted your internal body weight to resist the very same push, the push didn't go away, but you adjusted how you dealt with it. So you dealt with the push up here, and the result was your legs just don't tighten. Yeah.
yeah. I noticed that one in the video here a little further actually that I was leaning. So I actually bought a mirror, like a full person mirror, and put it up and stood in front of it and was leaning with my shoulder over to try to figure out, okay, what's moving, what's not moving, where's it going? So when I was riding Randy, I was like, okay, there's my shoulder, what's going on? So when I have my shoulder this way, it's going to feel this way. So I was more able to watch when something happened that makes me tilt, so I
Yes.
could resist it a little bit. So that was
Yeah.
really neat to see.
No, and even in the rider balance workbook I did, I made a big point out of saying we need mirrors, we need video, we need photographs because our brains, just like, and this is what Rainey's done, however she learned to organize her body when she was pushed or tolting or doing her traditional training, that habit begins to be normal in our
Mm-hmm.
nervous system. And when we go to change what's normal, it's very disorienting. We don't like it very much. The horse doesn't
Mm-hmm.
like it very much at first. But if we kind of keep playing with it, and for humans, when you use visual feedback, it's a big eye opener because what we think we're doing in our brain and what we're actually doing most times don't match very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I took
that's
I took
huge.
a video of me walking around the circle to the camera, away from the camera to see how do I actually move. and I had a hitch in my right hip.
Yeah.
I swung my hip over. It's like, oh, I look like Randy now. Just being aware of it. And
Yes.
so when I walk my dogs, I pay more attention. Where's my body? And I do have a little bit of a lean like this. I had a car accident, which pushed everything over.
Mm-hmm.
So I must have somehow adapted that position a little bit and
Yes.
it gotten better, but it's easier for me to fall in that way than this way. And when I walk, I have much more weight on my right leg than
That's
on
what
my
I
left
was
leg.
that's what I was going to ask you to pay attention
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Absolutely. So not only that, but people who tend to habituate kind of being back a little bit tend to keep more weight on the heels compared to the ball of the foot. And even so, when we're on the horse, we can rock forward and back with our torso and feel the weight shift between our seat and legs. When we're not on the horse, it's a little more subtle, but the bottoms of our feet give us a lot of feedback.
Hmm.
So if we just sort of notice, oh, wow, I have a lot of weight on my left foot compared to my right foot, maybe I need to adjust myself.
Yeah.
Or I have a lot of weight on my heels. Maybe I need
Hmm.
to lean a little more forward, or a lot of weight
Yeah.
on my toes. Maybe I need to relax back a bit. And at first, our brain goes, wow, you're really leaning forward, or you're really
Hmm.
leaning back. And then we look in the mirror or we see a picture and we go, ah, it's not as bad as it feels.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels horrible and it feels like this huge adjustment, but it really isn't that big of an adjustment. So kudos to you. You've been working nonstop for this whole time.
Yeah. For a week. It's been a week, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of videos. I've been thinking a lot. I've been reading a lot. I've been looking in the mirror a lot. It's not my thing, but now that I have a whole body mirror, I never had one.
Yeah.
I can see
Yeah.
my entire body.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's where, like, especially if we have an accident or an injury, what the body does is the nervous system sets up a detour to allow that part of the body to heal. And the reason we have physical therapy for people is because after surgery or an injury, the nervous system retains the detour
Hmm.
unless we actively restore the correct function.
Yeah.
And every horse, every person does that. And so that's why we've all been injured. You know, we've all had life happen to us. And
Yeah.
if we don't consciously work to restore the ideal function, all of those little detours just develop into our long-term habit.
Becomes the new normal.
Yep, absolutely. And then when we change it, I'm sure in front of the mirror, you felt like what Rainey was doing under with you riding. Like you have to
Yeah.
stop and kind
Yeah.
of digest it and let it process a little bit. And the movement, it's like I've even had that feeling of, I don't think I know how to walk anymore. Like
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to walk. And so it's a funny feeling when we go to change internal coordination. It can be kind of disorienting.
Yeah. I actually closed my eyes before I got to the mirror after a couple of times and tried to feel, okay, this is the crooked one. This is the straight one. All right. And then I opened my eyes and I was straighter. So I could, instead of just looking at it and saying, yes, you're straight. Yeah. I just did this. I did a close up here too.
This is
Yeah.
awesome.
Now I can see my
Mhm.
legs. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll replay this one. It's a short 30-second one. But this is the beginning of getting Rainey to use that right hind leg. And that's part of the reason she's going sideways, she's slowing down, she's stopping. So let me replay this one because the beginning of it you can really see. So here she's escaping, right? And if we kind of look at the hind legs, we'll see where the struggle is. So if you kind of keep your eye up here on top of the hindquarter
Yeah.
and the movement of the legs, you'll see here she's escaping. You're keeping your balance, you're navigating it. There's the right hind leg working. Boom. Oh, and it is stiff and sticky and rusty, and she's not happy, but she used it. Yes, yes, yes. That's why you're getting more and more lengthening of the neck in your subsequent rides.
So that's the circle or the corner, a bend, whatever, is seemed to, if I don't push her into it, whatever, seemed to help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And that little slowdown. So this is what you're going to feel a lot. Not maybe as dramatically as this, but you navigated it beautifully. So when she bends her neck and goes a little sideways, what you did was perfect. You sort of didn't let her overbend the neck. You kind of made your way back to your path of travel. And in that process, she had to use the leg she was trying to avoid using.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you could
And it,
see it right in, let me let it finish, right in, not there, not there, not there, there. Right hind, left hind, right hind, left hind, right hind, left hind. Yes. Oh, losing it. Yes. Yes. Yeah. That was her figuring it out. And you saw the strides were very, very short,
yeah.
very
But
slow, and not super comfortable for her, a little unstable back there. But the way, instead of saying like, oh, let me bend your neck to get you back on the path of travel, or let me um, give up, whatever, or overcorrect, you just sort of like kept the neck sort of straight, let her drift off the path of travel, made your way back on the path of travel. So what you focused on was what was going on internally instead of worrying about where she was going externally. And that was just, again, intuitively, however you did it, it was beautifully done.
I
And
did not. Go ahead.
yeah, you
If
just
you hadn't,
maybe felt your way through it. I don't know.
yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. I was actually going like, okay, if I pull the reins to the left, she's going to go more this way. If I pull the right, she's going to go this way. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to turn my body just a little bit. Once I know I did turn my body to help, because I thought maybe that, and I don't know if it worked or not, but
Yeah.
okay, that's good to know because I was getting a little bit like, I need instructions on how to get her around there, but it's just takes a little bit.
Yeah, the way you navigated it was perfectly navigated
Oh,
because
nice.
when a horse struggles like that, that's just a physical reality of restoring her body away from the dysfunctional habit towards ideal use. And that transition gets a little squirrely. It's not pretty. It's not perfect. And so I just wanted to point out how well you kept your focus in the right place. And
Oh, good.
that's why the third ride looked amazing.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And
Good.
so you're going to get moments of that either the next ride, you'll get moments of that even if you stay on the same pattern that you've been on, which we've talked about. And then when we start to target specific weaknesses in her body, you'll get moments like that again because it's hard. It's hard to change
Yeah.
coordination. And so by keeping that focus very much on your balance and sort of where's her neck, where's her back, you just made your way through it perfectly.
Good. I'm glad you told me that it's not totally messed up because if this is acceptable and this is a good way to go on, then I feel better about it. Because like, okay, what can I do to help her with it?
Yeah, and I think we sort of expect it's going to go smoothly into perfect. And I go,
No, not really.
yeah, yeah.
But
Or even, I mean, when the horses struggle, knowing, even though we know they're going to struggle to change, when they struggle, all of us who love our horse, we think, okay, what did I do wrong? Like that's always kind of our first thought. And it's nothing wrong at all. That's why I wanted to point it out on this video.
yeah,
That's very normal. And
okay,
it's,
good. That's what
and
I needed to hear.
yeah, and it's just to be expected. And the way you know that you're not, because if those steps, like that struggle, if the time of my ride, those struggly steps are increasing, then I know I'm on the wrong strategy. I need to change how I'm doing this. If those moments of struggle are decreasing, even if they're not going away, I know I have the right strategy and I'm applying it the right way.
Okay.
Okay. And then what we first looked at, the very first video, I saw the same moments, but they were, number one, not as dramatic. Number two, they didn't last as long. And number three, they were not as frequent. So
Okay.
that already tells me you're making progress in the right direction, doing exactly what you're doing.
Okay. She's good in a day. Yes, I take it.
Yes.
I take it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I run into it a lot with highly trained riders that they, in that same moment that you just sort of worked through, I would get the call going, my horse is worse, not better. And I have to explain, it's a little bit of a
Yeah.
process. They're going to feel worse before they
Yeah.
feel better because we're now asking them to use parts of the body that have been lying dormant for who knows how long, right? So she's going to have to knock the rust off those joints and build up a little muscle before it's more consistent. And
Okay.
that's why I wouldn't change anything you're doing for at least 2 weeks. And if you
Okay.
want to
Good.
do if you want to do a follow-up in 2 weeks, we can. Or you would also be safe for 30 days of this. You're on the right track. You have a
Okay.
great thing going. So I'll leave it up to you as far as when you want the next check-in. But I'm just thrilled, Tina.
Oh,
Thrilled.
good. Me too.
So
I needed that
exciting.
feedback for Rainy, not so much for me. I know I'm great. I'm just kidding. I call myself Tina the Great, just as a joke, because I do have confidence, sometimes a little cocky, but I I do want it for her. And I'm happy that
Yeah,
Tina the Great can help her.
absolutely. Till you have Rainy the Great and Tina the Great.
Yes.
Yes.
And it really, I mean, I didn't expect this much progress this fast, actually.
Well, that is, I mean, what just makes me so happy when I do your lessons is once we have a relationship of trust with our horse and we're not dealing
Yeah.
with resistance and we don't think we're the boss, we let the horse have an opinion.
Yeah.
All of that, what you're into now, having sorted all of that out, is you're into the physics. You're into the dynamic reality of weight and mass and the laws of motion. And that goes like this. It doesn't mean the horse is perfect, but it starts changing right away. You
Yeah.
start
And I do
getting
say
sneaky
if you have
peeks.
if you have the base solid, which I think now I have with her, then everything else will pick up
Hmm.
quicker, faster, more intense. So
Yes.
I, yeah, I'm very happy for her. I'm extremely happy that I can help her to feel better and move better and be even happier than she already is. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And as she gets through the uncomfortable newness part, I would say in 2 weeks to 30 days, you're going to have a horse that is looking forward to work, that is filling in the gaps, that is really changed in a way that you will notice.
yeah. An
Yeah.
interesting thing, I don't know how yeah, we way fast. You got to go. Okay. Very quick. My gelding, he's been watching this apparently, and yesterday he offered to be bridled and saddled, and he stood on a mounting block, and that could put my leg on him.
Uh,
He is a bucker, a bolter. He's not been written.
really?
He's not supposed to be written. I made a video. I had it on tape. I cried. I cried so much,
Oh my
and
goodness.
I will
I
send
s-
it to you just
no,
as
I
a
saw him in the videos hanging out and watching. And
yeah,
and horses, a lot of times horses will come when I'm working a horse and they'll come and stand by the fence or they'll come around. And I
yeah,
think that they sort of talk and teach each other.
yes.
So, yeah,
It's
so
to see him offering it because usually you show him a halter and he goes, "I'm in China."
yeah.
And he's been, I mean, I was moved to the core. I cried and I'm still
Wow.
crying. So
Wow.
this is all amazing. And I think he
That,
sees,
yeah.
so I will send you that video.
Thank you. Do send that.
So,
That would be
but you
great
have
to
another
see.
appointment. I
I
need to feed my
do.
horses and my dogs.
Okay.
Uh,
Let
and
me,
I'll keep you posted if you like to.
whoops, let me pause the recording.